Suzanne Alleyne is a prominent London-based cultural thinker who works at the intersection of academic research, business, arts, and culture. And we really spent a lot of time choosing our speaker to make sure we had the right person for you all. And after hearing Suzanne's short summary about what she was going to do, I was super excited and I had literally chills. And so she's going to be discussing some practical tools to ensure your community building is a sustainable endeavor. And I can't stress enough how important that is simply because it takes so much from you.
Let me just start off by saying this. It is so nice to be here. I'm going to be talking today about community building through something called sustainable brilliance. And the real baseline of that is, how can you do what you do? How can you be who you are and stay well? Outside of the pandemic and this period of time, we have a history, right, of community building and gathering, but at a cost, and the cost is to us, right? Now, some of you today are going to be like, "Rah, this woman overshares," and some of you will like it. But I'm giving you this information because the thing about me is I'm really real. Okay. Now, no insult to Croydon. I come from Croydon. I do not come from a family that has been in business. Do not come from a family that has gone to university, right? And so I've had to learn the hard way. I'm now 55. I'm having my menopause. I'm living my life to my fullest, but there are definitely things that I would have done differently. And there are things that I'm learning now. And that's what I want to share with you today. So it's all very practical. It's not about you have to have 2.3% to make profit. Those things you can go and learn from someone else. This is about me sharing my experience with you. So a little bit about me first. So start at the beginning. The beautiful little child on the left is me. That's a very happy me in a very bad shot in St. Moritz. I spent quite a lot of my life working with professional snowboarders. And the last shot is a great shot where we maybe went a little too heavy on the red lipstick. But who am I and what do I do? How did I get from when I was born to where I am now? So the first thing is that I'm a cultural thinker. Now, if anyone's sitting there like, I don't know what that is, to you, I say I made up that term. And I say I made up that term because that's how it felt. Having been to university, I understand that I coined the term. And the reason that language is important is sometimes it really is about getting people to understand who you are. Right? So there are multiple me's, right? There's the me that's out snowboarding with my friends, going out in the mountains. There's the me that does work. And there's also, for those of you that are into that kind of me that's really stuck as a kind of inner child panicking. Every day I'm nervous, right? So that idea of feel the fear and do it anyway is really important. So what is a cultural thinker? And why did I make that term up? I made that term up because when I got to a couple of years ago, I suddenly realized there were all these things I wanted to do, and there was nothing to describe that. So I am a researcher, I've done a master's, I'm a strategist, I help people talk about brand and who they are, but I'm also become a kind of an artist, and I really quiver when I say that, but I have to stand in it. And what it is for me is that conversation is my form of art. Now, this idea of a conversational artist is quite a new idea, but it's what I do. And how you choose to describe yourself is really, really, really important. And we're going to come to that in a little minute. So actually, there's a couple of tasks in this. So the first thing that I would like you all to do, and all I want you to do is to tell me your first name, and this is as much for everybody else as it is for me. Where are you now? Or where do you work, or where do you live? Whatever you feel is not too much to share. So you might say, I'm just picking someone here. My name's Ebony. I'm based in Birmingham. I'm based in New York. I'm based in Shoreditch. I'm based in Croydon. And my one question that I really want to get out of today is, so I'm gonna leave that to you, but you're gonna see why it's really, really important. So if you put that in the chat, who you are, Where are you? Where do you consider work? That could be your home area. And what question do you have for this location? So today we're going to talk about something that's really important to me. And if any of you have been on my website, this is what I stand for, right? I stand for this fact: culture plus strategy equals sustainable brilliance, right? And what you are all trying to achieve is sustainable brilliance. And sustainable brilliance means that you can keep going. And the brilliance is that you're fabulous at it, but you're also happy, right? So, first off, I don't know who knows this idea of vision, mission, and values, but your vision is what you're trying to do in the world. So, what I'm trying to do in the world, I've always done it, whether I was working with snowboarders, in television, it's really simple. I'm trying to create equitable spaces in the world. That doesn't mean that I want to just right the wrongs of black and brown folk, or right the wrongs of disabled folk, or right the wrongs of whoever around intersectionality. I want to create an equitable space. And actually, when we look back, that's what I've done throughout my career, right? Now, my mission is the way that I'm doing it. And the way that I do it is I work with people to help them understand that culture plus strategy equals sustainable brilliance. So I'm enacting my mission today by working with you, because for me, in order to create equitable spaces, we have to have more people like me winning, right? But winning isn't enough. Winning and you having a stroke or a heart attack, or you not be able to look after your kids or yourself, that's not winning. Winning is that you are doing what you want to do brilliantly, but sustainably. So now I'm sharing with you. Now, what I've shared with you so far is quite a little bit personal and a little bit professional, but you'll see why in a minute. So, because I'm a fake music fan, 3 is the magic number. And the reason 3 is a magic number for me is 3 things should be easy for you to remember. So what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about 3 things. 2 of those are kind of theories that I've put together. So again, they're made up, but they're things that I believe in. It's a way for me to house things and explain things to people simply. We're going to be talking about joined up thinking. We're going to be talking about my favorite saying at the moment, which is specificity, my friend, is your superpower. And then I'm going to give you, hopefully, let's see if I can pull it all together. I'm going to give you a living example of how I've managed to do what I've done. But I want to tell you this here and now, right? When you see this, you're like, oh, wow, she's done really well. Things are rolling for her. They are rolling, right? I am living my very best life. But at the very same time, I'm struggling. So what I do not want you to do is walk away going, oh my word, she set the bar so high. I got to raise 60 grand tomorrow for my community building. No, you don't. I live a regular life. I've been in the pandemic. I've had to crowdfund for my master's because I didn't have money. And some of the things that I'm trying to share with you, I did not do perfectly. Right? So my health is okay, but there are definitely things that I could have done differently to be more sustainable and brilliant. So it is a living thing as I'm going. I do not want you to walk away thinking that this is perfection. So first off, right, let us look at this idea. Joined up thinking, what is it, right? Now, here are some of the things I asked you. Who are you? What are you doing? What do you want to know? And so one of the things that joined up thinking is, it's really simple. It's bringing all of yourself and all of your skills and everything around you, right? So in academia, they talk about critical thinking. Critical thinking is the ability to think something through well and to look at all sides of a question, right? For me, the creative side of this is the notion. So the creative idea around this is not, are you a painter or are you an artist or do you draw? It is, what is that thing that is motivating you to gather people and be a community builder, right? Now, when I say critical thinking and strategic thinking, the strategic thinking is, how are you going to plan this out? So on a really simple level, right? If someone says to me, Suzanne, would you come to my wedding in 3 months' time? Here are the things that happen. I'm like, ooh, what do I need to do to have my flyest time at the wedding? First of all, I might think about I want to lose a bit of weight. I might be thinking about getting my hair done the day before. I might be thinking about the cost of a present. That's strategic thinking. We do it all day, every day. It's about applying the practical skills that you have to your work. Now, here's the other thing, right? You are all here in a room together. The other thing about joined up thinking is about using the resources around you. Nobody in this room has everything, but collectively you do. So I know you don't know each other, but one thing you can do is to try and connect with people when you come out of here. So joined up thinking is that ability to take all of yourself, that creativity, that passion, that reason that you're gathering people. Strategic thinking is around going, how am I going to map this out? And the mapping out of it is part of what keeps you well, because if you have a plan, you can kind of decide which way you're going, and more about that. And critical thinking is that ability to interrogate it, right? So for example, you may have someone here in their family will have someone who has learning needs or has a different set of needs. When you're community building, think about how would that apply to that person in your family who's different. That's critical thinking. That's being able to take some knowledge from something else and ask questions of what you're doing. So we talked about culture plus strategy equals sustainable brilliance. So the culture bit, okay, is this idea of what are you doing? How are you doing it? And the strategy bit is how have you written it down? So what you say and do together with what you write down on paper, your plan, they have to join up. And one of the ways that that happens is by thinking about yourself as a brand. And I want to give you a very quick definition of what a brand is. So I think we will all recognize that that is Colin Kaepernick on the left, and on the right is a Puma party, right? Now, I'm very cognizant of the fact that I am sitting at the moment in the hallowed halls of one of the best agencies in the world, right? And so I really thought about how this could work given the space that we're in. We are all brands, right? Remember, culture, how you talk about yourself being consistent with what is on the paper. Now, there were lots of pictures I could have picked of Colin, but I picked this one because I think it's really interesting. On the one hand, I do believe that statement, believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. But on the other hand, given what we're saying, I really don't. I think we have a history of sacrificing too much. The question becomes, what do you believe of that brand? What do you believe of both Colin Kaepernick and what do you believe of Nike? Right? Now, I don't think I need to go into that one too much. You can all be thinking about that for yourselves. My second question is on the right is Puma. Now, I'm a real trainer head, right? And I have about 50 pairs of trainers. At the moment, my Pumas are stashed in the bottom of my wardrobe. I cannot bring myself to wear them. And the nail in the coffin was when they did this thing called House of Hustle. I don't know if anyone knew about it. So basically, they threw a party not too far, and they turned a building into a trap house. They basically turned it into a drug den. And they thought that was a great thing to do. As a brand, that is inconsistent with serving me and my community, right? And so I want you to start thinking about the message that you give, the culture, how you create something, how you talk about yourself versus what you actually write on paper. What is the definition of a brand? The definition of a brand is not what you say you are. The definition of a brand is what your audiences are saying about you. So the definition of Puma can say what they like about themselves, but I'm their audience and how I view them is the important thing. Now, the truth of the matter is I'm not their core audience, and there are many of you sitting in here who may be their core audience. So what you need to understand about a brand definition is Who is your audience and how are you talking to them, right? So I want to give you one, again, that's kind of a little different. I was talking to some of my team about this, and I said, you know, Sainsbury's is always trying to bill itself, right, as kind of affordable. But I don't think if we looked at this, if I said to you, which do you think is the affordable brand, I'm guessing that you would say Lidl, right? And I'm guessing that if you go to Waitrose, you're probably more likely to be thinking it's a bit of a treat. Again, how are you viewing those brands as brands? One of the really important things that I want you to start thinking about is that because you are creating community does not equate to not thinking like a brand, and that you are a brand. How I hear you talk has to match with what you are putting on paper. So that is a very quick whistle stop tour of a brand. And why is that important? So again, there's lots of really long words for things, right? But I think we've all heard that idea of what are you doing? Why are you doing it? Who are you doing it for? Then I say, when are you doing it? Where are you doing it? And how are you doing it? If you can line all of those things up, you have a better chance of sustainability, by which I mean you have a better chance of what you are doing succeeding, right? Now, there's a very, very good talk by someone called Simon Sinek. So that's Simon and Sinek, Sinek. And he does this amazing talk on start with why. I suspect that all of you have started with why, even if you have not articulated it to yourselves, even if it is a gut thing. You may not know, but I'm going to show you in a minute why you have to know. So start with why. So here's a task for you to do. One of you Google Simon Sinek why, find the YouTube and stick it in the chat. And I ask you all to listen to that or watch that at some point outside of this. Because if you start with the why and you know who you're doing this for, again, a lot of us as community gatherers, we are doing this from an instinctual and a soulful need of wanting to do something. But here's one of your top tips for today. Apply it as if it is a business. So start with your why, think about who you're doing it for, and think about what you're doing. Now you'll notice that I've put the what first, and that's because I think a lot of you today may be able to say what you're doing, but I actually challenge you to do what's called an elevator pitch. Can you write in one sentence why you're doing it and who you're doing it for? When you then move on to thinking about when are you doing it? Are you doing it now in the day? Are you doing it in the evening? Where are you doing it? And the how, part of the how is about who can help you along the way. Now, when you speak to Akil and Renee, they will explain to you who is supporting them on this journey. They are the very best of examples of community gathering. They, in getting an organization like my MC Search is behind them, that has enabled them to afford to be able to support you by paying themselves, by paying me. But I guarantee that they have had to say, this is why we're doing it, this is who we're doing it for, this is how we're going to do it. And that also means you may be able to get that support of how, right, in ways that you did not think of. So that's a little whistle stop tour, really simple way. If you want to write a little business plan, right, you can start with this, and you might only need 5 lines of under each heading. Start simple. Pen and paper, your iPhone, your Samsung, your notebook. Literally start with that, 5 lines. And if you can't do that, find someone in this room, right? Doesn't matter that you don't know them, buddy up, and next week, do some peer support. One of you give one person 1 hour, one of you give another person. Sometimes it's much easier to help someone else pull something out. So that's that. Now, on to the second thing, specificity is your superpower. right? So first off, okay, what about you? So let's see how we're going to talk about that. So what I want you to do, I do not want you to share this in the chat. I'm going to say that again. You do not need to share this in the chat. I want you to write down 3 things to describe yourself, right? And I want you to write the things that you're really, if someone was going to come and chat to you and you wanted to kind of not impress them, but it was one of those ones where your shoulders are down and what are the 3 things that you're really impressed about yourself? It might be that you're really good at going to talk people. It might be that you're really good at writing things down. It might be that you're really good at coalescing people. It might be that when you have your afro and your Ruby Roo lipstick on, you feel super fly. Write it down, right? Now, I also want you to write 3 things down that you do not want to share with anyone. And you do not have to share it with anyone. Not today, not ever. But what I want to talk to you about is why it's not just the first 3 things that are your specificity and your superpower. It's all 6 things. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit about me and how we can get to this idea that specificity is your superpower. And then I'm going to explain why. So, I'm dyslexic, I have PTSD, dissociative disorder. As a personality, I'm a bit Marmite. Generally, you either like me or you don't. I'm a bit all or nothing, so I'm in or I'm out. Akil and Tia will tell you I was all up in their face about how long is this going to take and do I have time. Once I was in, I was like, yo, I'll come back and give you another hour. I'm all in or I'm all out. Now, sometimes that's good, sometimes it's not too good. I definitely feel very overweight, menopausal, and sometimes I just don't feel like I fit in. What I will share with you is that I'm 55 and I only started getting diagnoses about 10 years ago. But about 20 years ago, I was quite successful with money. And interestingly, what I'm about to share with you worked then. I then forgot all about it because I got PTSD. And now I've realized those things are my superpower. And now what I'm going to do is explain to you why specificity is your superpower. So there are a couple of things that you really should think about. I know that a lot of you here will have full-time work and be doing whatever your community gathering is outside of that space. So here's one part of specificity. There are only 365 days in the year. Now, some of you might be able to time travel. I can't do that. And within that, you need time off. So if you work whatever, 5 days a week, and you need your weekends, part of specificity is about going, who am I? What time do I have to devote to whatever it is I'm going to do? And how am I going to stay well? So for example, I have done 3 talks this week, and next week I've got another 2 talks and I've got to write a plan. How am I going to stay well doing that? I can't pretend that I can pull an all-nighter because actually I'm just going to get really sick and have a really bad asthma attack. So one of the things about specificity is one is about knowing your skills, know who you are, know whether you've got kids, know what they need from you, know what you need for your partnerships to flourish, and be realistic, be specific about what time you have to do things, right? And being realistic about what the cost is going to be, right? I believe that what you have to do in order to use the specificity of knowing both who you are, who your personality is, and then being specific on practical things around what time, so you then have to allow gaps for the magic. So if you're able to be clear and you've got a strategic plan, outside of that, there is the magic. And I'm going to talk to you about that in a minute. So all the things I just showed you, that's me really quite happy by a mountain. And that is the superpower on the right. So I now am going to move forward. And what I'm going to try and do is give you a living example of a living example of how that has worked for me. So again, just to remind you, culture, what you do, how you do it, what people see, all the unsaid things, right? Puma can say what they want about loving off black folk. As far as I'm concerned, you do House of Hustle, no you don't. So culture, all the things, strategy, what you do, all the planning, who, what, why, when, how, who am I, what have I got, what are the things that I don't necessarily want to tell people, but actually they're superpower, that equals your sustainable brilliance. Now, but here's the thing, right? You don't know what you don't know. I don't know what I don't know. You don't know what you don't know. But guess what? Other people in this room, metaphorically in this Zoom room, other people around you, your networks, they can help you to get to grips with what you don't know about yourself. They will help you with the gaps. I'm looking at you straight in the face. I would not be alive without all the people who have both supported me and helped me see the gaps. So now what I want to do is spend the last couple of minutes telling you about a project that I'm working on. And hopefully if I get this right, it will give you a living example of everything that I've just tried to share with you. So, as I said, I'm dyslexic. Now, what that means for me, that shows up differently. But essentially, I see the world in kind of like a four-dimensional jigsaw. So if you have the answer to something, I quite often have it in my head, but it's as if it's chopped up in a four-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. I've got, actually have to work backwards. I have to see all the bits. That's point one. Point two, my PTSD and having led quite a traumatic life actually means I'm very able to step into other people's shoes, right? So actually probably my single skill as a leader isn't that I'm necessarily brilliant, but I'm really empathetic and I'm really kind of intuitive and I can really bring people along. And for me, collaboration is king, right? And I think I get my leadership skills from the dyslexia, from the PTSD, from going to a school that was majority white. And I think I want to create equitable spaces because my friends are everyone, right? And much as I am absolutely on the floor with all of the recent events at the moment around George Floyd, I know that revenge isn't the thing. It is about creating an equitable space, right? So I took myself off to university at 50 and I crowdfunded because I knew that at 50, going through the menopause, I was not well enough, right, to take out a £10,000 loan. And I also couldn't do it. I'd been sick, right? And so I crowdfunded to do my degree. While I was doing my degree, I also won a massive Arts Council England grant of over 100,000. Arts Council England is the arm's length body from the government that deals with the arts, the funded sector in the UK. And I won a grant to help me in leadership because there were not enough Black and disabled people. The two things, right, came together and my poor little dyslexic head was just like spinning. And the one thing that my friend said to me is, when you go to university, yeah, do you not let them make you the person who talks about diversity? When I got there, I was in a cohort of 90 and I was the only Black British person there. 90 people, me. Every time they talked about diversity, people would look at me. Now, I don't know what happened, but the universe conspired and I ended up writing my dissertation on why there aren't enough Black women in leadership positions in funded organisations. So for people who are in London, why aren't we seeing Black women leading the South Bank or National Theatre? If you're in Birmingham, why aren't we seeing people lead places like MAC? Those kind of institutions. Anyway, I did it. It was great. It was painful, but it was great. At the same time, I'm doing this leadership course, right? And I'm waking up in the middle of the night and I'm like, and I'm hearing people talk about how they haven't been able to diversify. And I'm like, dude, I'm 50. I've seen people for 30 years who look like me try and get in. And then all of those things I've been reading, the dyslexia, the trying to be empathetic. I woke up and I was like, I read this article from The Atlantic called Power Damages Your Brain. And I suddenly started to think, hang on a minute. My relationships with my family, my relationships with men, my relationships with the human beings, my relationships with people like you, I was like, everything's affected by power. And then the dyslexia and the PTSD just combined, right? And that's where, once I started to own who I was, once I started to understand that with dyslexia, sometimes I waffle, with PTSD, sometimes I spin out, with a dissociative disorder, sometimes I feel, once I let go of that and I talked to my team about that, it made a gap. And that specificity of knowing who I was became my goddamn superpower. And so instead of leaning away from it, I started to lean into it. I started to tell what my truth was. Now, I'm not saying you have to share your shit, as the saying goes, but please know it. And what that meant was I woke up one day and I was like, where does power reside in the brain? And because I come from Croydon and because I keep it real, I was like, there's a project in this. Now, I'm going to wrap up by saying this. Neurology of power is probably now my lifelong passion. I've so far raised £50,000 from naught in about a year of really talking about it. I think we're probably on trend to double that. It is going to be a tool that allows people to think about how power affects the world, how it affects society. I want you to think about this. Think about why people want power, right? How they use it, how you feel when you don't have it. I've built a team around me, right? But if you go back to everything that I said, who am I? What am I trying to do? I've written a strategy now for what neurology of power is, okay? And I'm trying to make it something that's brilliant and sustainable. So, in summary, who are you? What are you trying to do? Why are you trying to do it? How can you bring all of you in a way that's comfortable for you? All right. And how can you use this fantastic network of people around you? Okay. So here's the first question. How can we create a more holistic, decolonized approach to sustainability that includes disabled people? I think that how we just create an inclusive approach, full stop, is really difficult. And I've definitely had a really difficult time this year, specifically, in thinking about, for me, with my own political beliefs, I feel like I'm swimming against the tide. I feel like that I'm living in a country that I was born in and that proactively does not want me to thrive, and it actually wouldn't care if I died. And I think for me, that's why I love these spaces, because I can say this and that's not necessarily your truth, but it's definitely my truth, right? And so I think when I answer that question within that context. But yesterday I chaired a meeting for some kind of senior leaders, I guess, in the funded arts sector who were either ethnically diverse or they were allies, by which I mean they were prepared to stand up. Now, we were specifically talking about the Sewell report. Some of you will know is this report that the government really commissioned, and they already knew that outcome, which is that this country is not institutionally racist and organisations aren't. And secondly, there have been some other conversations in the government around what's called retain and explain. So essentially, keep all the statues and we'll do explanations. Now, why do I give that context? Because that's the context within answering that question. I think one of the ways is that we have to understand we can't do this on our own. And actually, I would suggest that if you try and do this on your own, you're going to make yourself sick. So I think part one is find groups like this, find allies, find people who can give you balance. And then within your work, look at how you can get the financial support or the collaborative support. And then as I said, I'm all or nothing. So I'm quite into quite big ideas, as you can see from Neurology of Power. But I had a mentor who reminded me that sometimes what you need to do is set a lot of small fires so that, and then those fires start connecting. So I think sometimes it isn't those massive big things that you can do, it's a lot of little things. So I think my answer to that practically is find like-minded people, look for collaboration, look for who can fund it, and be very clear about your intentions. 3 is the magic number. People can't focus on more than 3. So drill down what you're doing to 3. Think about what you can do at that moment. Maybe have a bigger 1-year or 5-year plan, but break it up into sizable chunks. And also know which battles you don't want to take on right now. So, and really practically, last night I followed Questlove, and when I should have been asleep last night, I saw a tweet where he said, "I'm not watching that video." And of course, my first thought was, what video is he talking about? And he's talking about the Adam Toledo video that's now come out. And I said, you know what? I haven't watched that. I haven't watched the George Floyd video. For me, that's I can't. I just can't. And I think it's about knowing your own boundaries. We have to decolonize. We have to rise up. But we are individuals with human beings. So connect, collaborate, know your boundaries, and really try and know what your relationships are. You want those partnerships, but sometimes someone's relationship is about giving you the funding to enable you to do something. But you have to know your boundaries. Otherwise, you are going to make yourself sick, especially if you, like me, feel like, there are 3% of this country that are Black British. In total, in terms of ethnically diverse, there's around 11 to 14%, 3%, right? So, we have to work carefully and strategically, but also we have to work with care. So I think that's what I would say. And for me, as someone at that intersection of age, disability, mental health, I feel things, I see things differently to some. You have to be confident. It's what I'm saying about specificity. Be confident in knowing how you feel. If you feel overwhelmed, that is fine. If you need to step back, that is fine. Find your tribe, find different tribes to connect to. So that would be my answer to that.
My question to you really is more along the lines of, as someone who has been working in local government for far too long, nearly 20 years, I'm very much at the point where I'm trying to break away from being in that institution of local government. I do think creatively, but I'm not necessarily in the creative industry. And sometimes I feel like my age is not on my side. And so many initiatives, quite rightly, focus on young people and getting young people into spaces. And I just wonder, what steps do I need to take to change my path? How can I make connections beyond just liking someone's page on LinkedIn, which I did straight away for you, Suzanne? Any tips on next steps that I can take?
So I definitely feel like that I've had a life of thirds, right? So there's kind of, well, maybe it's not even thirds. There's the bit where I grew up, then there's the bit where I was working in snowboarding and traveling with brands, and then there was the bit kind of where I wasn't feeling great, and then there's now. And so in a way, at 55, I'm slightly reinventing myself or evolving. And part of that has been really difficult. So my research, much better suited to someone who's done a PhD, but I made a decision not to do that. That's wiped out millions of pounds of research. Then I feel like I quite often don't get into the entrepreneur stuff because I'm over 26, right? So I understand that feeling of where's my gap. But again, I think if you can articulate what it is you want to do, and then part of it is, I definitely believe that culturally, that we're connected to magic, right? And in a very different way to other cultures. And there's a lot of African psychology that can back that up, right? If you write it, you can think it into existence. the magic is in the gap of writing down and putting it out. Now, me and Anita are connected in the most random way, right? I went to support a mutual friend, and Anita suggested I apply for something. And I can't even tell you, I applied for it and I got it, right? The magic of that has shifted my life radically. So the opportunities are out there. There's opportunities for everyone, but you have to be able to articulate it. And that comes down to the specificity. And so it is very much like the things that I hate every single morning, haven't done it. Like, try and meditate. I know that sounds so weird, but if you get up and you give your body balance, and then you take that time, use your time wisely. What is it I'm trying to do? Why, how can I do that within the role that I'm in at the moment? What time do I have? What do I need? You have to be able to ask for what you need. And then connect in the way that is authentic to you. Connect in the way that you would like someone to connect with you. Now, personally, I don't think I'm a great networker because I'm very clear about who I am. Honestly, if I don't really feel your vibe, I don't care who you are, whether you're a billionaire, whether you are the head of Nestle. Do you see what I'm saying? But what is my saving grace personally is that I think there's a commonality I can find with everyone. And so actually my version of networking is to find that commonality. Sometimes I can help you, sometimes you can help me. And the other thing I will tell you is I had a very good mentor for a while, and he told me about this idea of weak networks. So I might be your weak network. You don't know me. I don't know you. You think I'll give you a vibe. So what you do is you connect and you're like, I don't have anything to say to you right now, but I'm going to come back to you when I do. Now, actually, sometimes weak networks are stronger than your friends and your immediate colleagues. Because actually, if you have something or if you need something, you can then go to them directly. Now, my thing is, I think some of you have connected. I've connected already because I know myself. When I leave this room, I'm going to be exhausted for the day, right? I haven't got time then to be writing nice emails. So know yourself. I know who I am. I've connected, like someone was talking from Google, Nisha, I think, connected straight away. And then I can step back. That's a weak network. So I think do what works for you, right? But be true to who you are. But the biggest thing, know the universe can provide, but you have to ask for it. And then you have to leave the gap for it to happen. I'm notorious. Like, I thought I was going to get quite a lot of funding the other day. It will happen, but it hasn't happened. For a week, I was all in my head, panicking, da, da, da. As soon as I was like, you know what? Just remember, what is for you will not pass you. Some other funding has come up. But almost while I was holding on, angst-ridden, it couldn't happen. But you do have to practice that. So I try and meditate in the morning. I'm really whack, I don't. But when I do, to be honest, the most happens because my body is balanced. So that's what I would suggest. I hope that's useful and not too esoteric.
No, it's really useful. Thank you. It's so strange that you said what's for you won't pass you by, because it is something that my family has constantly said to me, you know, when you're in tears because, I don't know, you didn't get the job, speak it into existence. I think it's really powerful, and I think that's something that I really, really need to connect with. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think it does take practice. It doesn't happen overnight, doesn't always happen. That doesn't mean there isn't going to be failure. But I think it really is about breathing yourself through. Do you know what I mean? And really opening up. So you have to create the space and then let the magic happen. Outside of those bigger things that are really outside of our control, what we are able to do is work towards working from the inside out. And I think it comes down, it's very, that thing of, I'm very extreme. I'm able to write things down. And sometimes I have this thing where it's in my head and I haven't quite articulated it in the front of my brain to write it down. But eventually, if you write it down and then you almost think strategically how you're going to do it, but you kind of almost then have to let it go. Do you know what I mean? And some of it, especially around community gathering and building, the key thing is it's that weird tension of treating it like you're creating a brand and a company, but at the same time, you may not have the initial resources. So you really do have to be extra to strategic in a way to really write down what time you have and why you're doing it. And sometimes it's about timing, right? And what I would say is that now is the time for community work, right? Now is the time to flourish. Now is the time for boldness. And if you can connect with people, it might be that sometimes I don't feel bold, and sometimes I literally have to go, what would I tell someone else? And then I have to inhabit that space for myself. Because sometimes as human beings, it's just hard to sell yourself. And sometimes it's very hard to think about what you've done. I thought that by end of last month, I would have raised £100,000, right? Now I've mapped all that out. Some of it's about staff and all the rest of it. And I had a few days of being like, oh my God, how am I going to? And then me and my assistant were like, are you crazy? You've raised 50K. Just celebrate that. So set yourself the milestones, but celebrate get your list of things to do and celebrate every single time you tick something off. Because you're alive and you're breathing and you can keep going, but take that break when you need to take the break. I hope that's helpful. Any more questions?
Obviously the last couple of years has been horrible because of COVID, but prior to that, my dad took his own life, and that prompted me to start a charity that focuses on mental health, especially in the Black community, and we've kind of paired it with music, that's like you come for a party, and then there's also mental health professionals there that you can seek help from, and that's been stopped now, obviously, because we can't have that party. And I feel like I've kind of, we had the first one and it went well and everything, and I feel like I've kind of walked away from it now, but it just hasn't been practical at the moment, and I don't know how to get back into it, I guess. The same with networking, like face-to-face people networking. I'm quite good at that, but here, like Zooms or contacting people online is harder. It's kind of two parts, but if you can speak on any of it.
So I think that this idea of specificity, know what you're going through, okay? So know, and I think allow yourself to sit with that, and allow yourself to take the time that you need. That whole idea of what is meant for you will not pass you, is that sometimes you can start something, and sometimes in a moment of grief or difficulty, what you need to do for you is to start something. But equally, it might be a moment to set it down, right? So I think spend the time first. That's that thing about, for me, for meditating, asking yourself that question: what do I need to do now? I never thought, right? I just did not think that going to a therapist in my 30s and 40s and reliving trauma and getting all the diagnoses would be my superpower. And it could not have been my superpower then, because I needed to process it, right? And I'm also not suggesting that everyone should go out and talk about their life in the way that I do. That works for me. But what I think you do need to do is to sit there and go, what do I need? Right? And the thing about saying, what do I need, is sometimes you don't know what you don't know. You don't even know you're putting boundaries on what you need because you're too scared that you might not be able to get it. So for example, sometimes what you might need is 6 months where you have no financial responsibilities. Now, for some people, that actually feels like an impossibility. But there are grants, there are funds, but at least knowing it, you may be able to scale back. right? And also know what you need in terms of support. You may need a mentor or a coach. You may need that group of people around you that can collaborate and give you ideas. You may need a group of people around you who experience depression or not necessarily being able to be fully present every day of the week, and you may need to gather some ideas. You may be a person like me. I've just turned my hallway into a think thing, because sometimes I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I just need to be able to go and draw on my wall and then go back to bed, right? So I think start by just sitting with yourself, right? Think about what just, if you could, what you need. And sometimes that way of doing it is to go, if it were me and I had said that to you, what would you offer? What would you say to me? Right? Because sometimes it's easier to talk about yourself thinking about how you would support someone else. So that's a really practical part. What was the second part of your question?
Just, I suppose no one really knows what's going to happen with opening back up, but I'm just missing out on the actual face-to-face networking. And like, I do have a lot of like anxieties around using social media, even though I'm 25. So like Instagram and Twitter should be my bread and butter, I feel like. But just the way that I've been like quite self-conscious growing up, I was never happy having an online presence, but I was always okay just like vibing, being a people person. And I just need to, I was wondering maybe how you find, if you've found any techniques that make it easier for you to have a presence online, if you've had any anxieties beforehand.
So I think, again, it's about stepping into who you are, right? I think I said earlier that I didn't realize till, I've got a very weird, for me anyway, where if something happens, that I can just make that become my life. So I've worked on TV shows where you work abroad, right? And so, for example, I used to have a flat. I'd go somewhere and they'd give me a flat for 3 months. Within a week, that could have been my life permanently, right? And there's an advantage to that because you acclimatize quickly. But the disadvantage is you don't know what you've locked off. For me in this pandemic, actually coming in this office today, even though it's pretty much bare, to be honest, I'm speaking to maybe 3 or 4 people. It's like, oh my gosh, I feel so much more alive. I really thrive on face to face. So I think it's about going, what can you do? Just because you're 25 doesn't mean that social media is your natural habitat. Is it that you could send something out and connect in your local park? Who's around you? And that's what I mean about your superpower. You're thinking, I suspect, that because you're 25 and you're seeing so many people on social media, everybody wants to be on social media. I bet that there's a whole community of people who don't want to be on social media. Your superpower might be thinking about how you can connect with other people who feel the same way. The challenge is that what I think I'm hearing is, oh, this is me. Everyone else isn't like that who's 25. I know a good few people who don't want to. Who could you connect with in the real world in a way that feels safe, right? And so that would be my suggestion to you. And at the same time, think about if you were talking to someone else and they had those feelings about social media, what can you do? So I'm in partnership at the moment with a really big institution around my research, an arts institution. Mate, if you look at my social media channels, there's nobody following me because I haven't put anything on there. I'm doing 3 talks a week. Do you know how much content that is? And so actually what I'm trying to work out is who can run that for me? Because actually isn't what I'm good at. It just, do you know what I mean? So that's that thing about knowing what knowing what you know and knowing what you don't know. I don't want to have my face all over social media. I feel like my face is puffy and all the rest of it. I'm going to have to get over it. Do you see what I mean? So for that bit for me, I'm like, okay, I'll hand it over to someone else. I will give them the content, let them do it. And then I'm like, actually, what I need once a week, I've realized now, is to go out and actually meet a human being. So I'm actually just going to go once a week. I'm looking whether it's a mentor or someone that understands social distancing. And that little bit of breathing will give me the energy to continue to do the things in Zoom. Is that helpful?
Yeah, it's really helpful. I think I think I was just putting a lot of pressure on myself, thinking that this social media thing was going to be a massive barrier. But the way you've explained it, I think I can find ways around it. It's like that kid's book, isn't it? It's like you can't go over it, you can't go under it.
But
We'll
this
have
is,
to go through it.
this is what I mean about specificity is your superpower, and the 3 things about yourself that you're almost mortally embarrassed about, or you think is just you. That almost becomes, you know, that picture of the guy trying to push the bolt. I always get what it is, cynicism or something, where it's the thing that stops you. And so it's so big that you're not looking at what you can do, or you didn't seem like you were considering that there were other people who might feel the same way. And what happens if you opening up about that supports other people? Because that's what community gathering is.
Yeah, definitely. Because I get told that I should like social media, that I'm like, and I'm doing air quotes now, I'm an attractive young woman and I should use that. But I always feel fake when people tell me that, because I'm like, I don't want to like get onto a comedy scene because I feel tick a box or anything. I'm just a person in my own rights, and I'd rather have that. I'd rather people appreciate what I see as my strengths than just what I look like on the outside, because that's not something that I see as a strength.
But also, I mean, look at, and also, so one of the things that is really interesting, I've worked on some kind of quite high class styling, fashion styling, right? Well, I'm not a stylist, so I've been the location person. And I remember saying to someone, oh, you know, I can't find clothes to fit. And they said, listen, and I can't afford a stylist, and everyone around me. And they're like, listen, yeah, look for someone who's famous and is the same sort of size as you, and look at how they dress, right? And I'd say the same thing. Look around. The person that comes to mind is Banksy. Do you know what Banksy looks like? No. Look how well Banksy's done. You haven't seen Banksy on anything, right? And so there's always a way to break the rule. And I think half of that is about authenticity. You might be able to do a peer thing where someone might not like being in person. They might love being online. Maybe they manage your digital presence for you. Do you see what I mean? But start from going, that's why I always say, the 3 things you think are your superpower and the 3 things you think aren't. Because the thing that I feel that you think isn't your superpower is that you don't like being online. And actually, I'm going to flip that for you and say that is probably the very thing that will connect you to others.
Definitely, yeah. Just writing it down.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for sharing so much already. I think where I am feeling challenged is actually sharing with family and friends about my neurodiversity. So I was recently diagnosed with dyslexic dysgraphia, and to be honest, I only accepted it in the last few weeks. But it's like I am finding work challenging. I am finding just life in general, everything you said, I agree with, but it's like I feel like I'm in a bubble and I don't know how to move on to the next stage of the bubble. And so it's just like, I know I need to let people in, but knowing my Ghanaian parents, they're going to think it's all about them. And it's like, I haven't got the energy to deal with you dealing with it. I'm still dealing with it. So it's a case of who to let in, who needs to be let in, and how do I let them in, I think.
So I think the first thing is that protection is not a bad thing. So let's just put that out there. And sometimes that protection can and needs to be from those that love you but don't understand, right? And I think that's really important, and it's a real tension, right? I know that because of the way I present, many of my friends, they literally don't get it. They don't understand how I can speak to a room of 400 people. They don't understand how I could chair a meeting and then remember all these little bits and questions that people ask to thread it together. But if you ask me to write something down, I can't get it out my head. So I think the first thing is believe yourself. That's the very, very first thing. And know that what you're feeling is true and it's fine and it's okay. And the fact that the reason we label it is because of ableism, right? It's because everything has been designed as if everybody is the exact 2.4 caricature. Nobody is, right? And actually, the way that I look at it is that one of my superpowers is that because I don't fit into that, I have been forced, kicking and screaming, into looking at who I am. So actually, I feel that I'm more able than many people who are so-called able, because they don't have to look at themselves, right? And that self-reflection is also a superpower. So my first thing to you is just breathe, know that you are fine and fabulous, and know that there is no need to panic, even though it feels like it. Second, start thinking about the people who you've always been able to talk to. Go and find a mentor or someone you can talk to. I don't know if you're salaried or if you're freelance. If you're salaried and there's someone in your organization that you feel you can talk to, know that. The other thing is that think about what you have because of this diagnosis that you have. It's what I was trying to explain. I see things in ways and shapes that people who aren't dyslexic, they don't see it that way. And that's what means that I come up with loads of ideas in the market that are winning. But in order for me to do that, I have to have a group of people around me. It's taken me 4 years to get to that point. I think it's no surprise that I'm now beginning to get fellowships and awards because I needed that team, and it hasn't happened overnight. So, one, try and think about what you have as a superpower. 2, be very practical about who you share that with for the moment. Look for other people. I'm sure there are other people in this group who, if they don't identify exactly, could give you some support. And sometimes just hearing yourself talking or hearing someone else talking about similar things can help. So I've got a kind of a loose friend and colleague who's talked to me for hours and often says to me, oh my gosh, I'm burning your ear out. No, that hearing them talk about what's happening to them is a reminder to me that I'm okay. So don't go into it thinking, oh, I'm just burning someone's ear off. And then start to think about, in that ideal world, what would make me thrive? What do I need? And start to work towards it. If you can't get it in the place you are, start thinking about where you could get it elsewhere. And if it's helpful to you, know that when you're asking something for yourself, that is a form of community gathering, because there will be 10 other people who simply don't have the energy to ask. And when you do it, it's good for them too. And slowly, you kind of get this, it's like the glass half full. You start off with feeling like, oh, whoa, I can't tell those around me, and I'm full of anxiety. As you start to tell the right people around you, you get the support, what happens is the glass changes, right? And then one day you look around and you go, oh, wow, actually, I've got some of the things I need around me, and some of that anxiety has lessened. Is that helpful?
That is exactly what I needed to hear. Thank you.
I've got a sincere gratitude for all of you. I want to thank the Mentor Black Business team. I want to thank the Out the Box team, and I want to thank Suzanne for spending some time with us here today. My name's Akil. I'm the organizer of Mentor Black Business, and thanks for coming to watch our masterclass. As you can see, life's happening to all of us, but it's okay. We keep going, we keep making, and we keep doing. We'd love for you to like, comment, and subscribe to this video, and hope you learned something. And let us know in the comments how you do. Catch you later. Bye.